Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Welcome back to Outlaws and Gunslingers with the host Bang and Dang. And back for another intriguing episode of Outlaws and Gunslingers with Bang and Dang. Fresh off of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, and people are like, it was almost the 9/11 anniversary. Why didn't you guys do that? Because. Okay, that's the answer we're given. Because. We're going to move on this week to one of the most famous trials in the early part of American history, early 1900s, the crime of the century, one of the many crime of the centuries, Leopold and Loeb, who attempted to, some rich, snobby, wealthy kids who were like, you know what, I think we're so rich and snobby that we can go and commit the perfect crime.
Right.
And that's what we'll do.
we'll do it.
Yep. Nathaniel Freudenthal Leopold Jr. and Richard Albert Loeb, usually referred to collectively as Leopold and Loeb, were two wealthy students at the University of Chicago, kidnapped, murdered 14-year-old Bobby Franks in Chicago.
Not Bobby Franks.
Not Bobby Franks. In May of 1924, they committed the murder, characterized at the time as the crime of the century, hoping to demonstrate superior intellect, which they believed enabled and entitled them to carry out a perfect crime without consequences.
Entitled
little bitches.
Oh, man. Entitled. We hear that word a lot these days. Well, Nathan Leopold was born 19th November 1904 in Chicago. He is the son of Florence and Nathan Leopold, a wealthy German-Jewish immigrant family. A child prodigy, Leopold claimed to have spoken his first words at the age of 4 months.
Oh,
get the hell out of here.
Maybe, though.
He claimed it. How the hell would he know? Because Mama said, you spoke your first words at 4 months old. At that time, I knew you were going to commit the crime of the century. At the time of the Moida, he had completed an undergraduate degree at the University of Chicago with Phi Beta Kappa. Phi Beta Kappa honors, and planned to begin studies at Harvard Law School after a trip to Europe. Isn't it always? Gotta go abroad for a summer.
I had to have, and he had plans, right? Well, Leopold had reportedly studied 15 languages, claimed to speak 5 fluently, and had achieved a measure of national recognition as an ornithologist.
I wonder how that is.
A zoology.
Oh.
So he's studying animals.
Good for him.
Good for him, yeah. Good, cool. Leopold and several other ornithologists identified the Kirtland's warbler and made astute observations about the parasitic nesting behavior of brown-headed cowbirds, which threaten the warblers.
Oh, no.
He evidently maintained his interest in birds after his crime, right into the field museum from his prison cell regarding specimens he had donated.
Dang. Look at you, bud. Could have done something good in the world.
Right.
Richard Loeb was born on 11th of June, 1905, in Chicago, to the family of Anna Henrietta and Albert Henry Loeb, a wealthy lawyer and a retired vice president of Sears, Roebuck and Company.
Oh.
Look at that shit.
Vice president, huh?
Dang. His father was Jewish, and his mother was Catholic. Oh, jeez. How in the hell did that work out? Like Leopold, Loeb was exceptionally intelligent. With the encouragement of his governess, he skipped several grades in school and became the University of Michigan's youngest graduate at age 17. Wow. Michigan's a hard school, too. Loeb was a student at the University of Chicago Law and was especially interested in doing graduate work in history at the time of the Moida. Compared to Leopold, Loeb was not overly interested in intellectual pursuits, preferring to socialize, play tennis, and read detective novels.
Oh, detective novels. I wonder who came up with the crime then.
All right, he just wanted to live a good life, make some money, and go home and read his stories. Sherlock Holmes, his programs.
The two men grew up with their respective families in the affluent Kenwood neighborhood in Chicago's South Side. Ooh, wow. South Side really went downhill, huh? Loeb's owned a summer estate, which is now called Castle Farms in Charlevoix, Michigan, because all the rich people do, as well as a mansion in Kenwood, 2 blocks from the Leopold home.
Dang, that's a long way from Chicago.
I know.
Charlevoix? Holy shit.
That's not that far.
That's almost in the UP.
What are you going to do? They're rich. Though Leopold and Loeb knew each other casually while growing up, they began to see more of each other in mid-1920.
Oh.
And the relationship flourished at the University of Chicago, particularly after they discovered a mutual interest in crime.
Oh, no.
Leopold was particularly fascinated by Friedrich Nietzsche's concept of supermen interpreted them as transcendent individuals possessing extraordinary and unusual capabilities whose superior intellects allowed them to rise above the laws and rules that bound the unimportant average populace.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That guy took that to heart, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Jeez, OP.
He's like, we can be Superman. I can be your Superman.
Leopold believed that he and Loeb were such individuals. Hey, we're those guys,
Right.
Loeb. By his interpretation of Nietzsche's doctrines, they were not bound by any of the society's normal ethics or rules.
Jeez.
In a letter to Loeb, he wrote, "A Superman is, on account of certain superior qualities inherent in him, exempt from the ordinary laws which govern men. He is not liable for anything he may do." Wow.
Oh, these guys don't sound too smart after all, do they?
Wow. They got to have, one of these guys got to have a head injury when he was a child or something, right? The pair began asserting their perceived immunity from normal restrictions with acts of petty theft and vandalism. Breaking into a fraternity house at the University of Michigan, they stole penknives, a camera, and a typewriter that they later used to type their ransom note.
Oh.
Nice. We're going to need that typewriter. Grab it.
Emboldened, they progressed to a series of more serious crimes, including arson, but no one seemed to notice. Disappointed with the absence of media coverage of their crimes, they decided to plan and execute a sensational, perfect crime that would garner public attention and confirm their self-perceived status as Superman.
Okay.
Bobby Frank.
Poor
little
Bobby
Bobby.
Frank. That's
With his little knickerbockers on and everything.
Right. Leopold and Loeb.
Called knickerbockers? Knickers?
Maybe. Leopold and Loeb, who were 19 and 18 at that time, settled on kidnapping and murdering a younger adolescent as their perfect crime. They spent 7 months planning everything, from the method of abduction to disposal of the body. To blur the actual nature of their crime and motive, they decided to make a ransom demand and devise an intricate plan for collecting it, involving a long series of complex instructions to be communicated, one set at a time, by phone. They typed the final set of instructions involving the actual money drop in the form of a ransom note, using the typewriter stolen from the fraternity house. A chisel was selected as the murder weapon.
Jeez.
And it was purchased.
A chisel?
A chisel?
What are you doing with a chisel? What are you going to do there?
Oh, you're going to chisel.
Maybe they get like one of those thin ones and like an ice pick. After a lengthy search for a suitable victim, mostly on the grounds of the Harvard School for Boys in the Kenwood area, where Leopold had been educated, the pair decided upon Robert Bobby Franks.
Oh, that sucks.
I know. Just walking around like that one.
That's the one.
He is a 14-year-old son of wealthy Chicago watch manufacturer Jacob Franks. Bobby Franks was Loeb's second cousin and an across-the-street neighbor who had played tennis at the Loeb residence several times.
Oh, jeez.
Why would you do somebody you know?
Right, especially your second cousin, bud. Now you got to go to the funeral.
Well, that's where they mess up the perfect crime anyways. You never, ever, ever, ever do somebody you know.
Right. Leopold and Loeb put their plan into motion on the afternoon of 21st May, 1924. Using an automobile that Leopold rented under the name Morton D. Ballard, they offered Franks a ride as he walked home from school. The boy initially refused because his destination was less than 2 blocks away. He's like, nah, I'm good, bud. A couple blocks down the road, I can see my mailbox from here.
Right.
But Loeb persuaded him to enter the car to discuss a tennis racket they had been using.
I'd be like, dude, I'm 2 blocks there. You can just meet me.
Jeez. The precise sequence of the events that followed remains in dispute. But a preponderance of opinion placed Leopold behind the wheel of the car while Loeb sat in the back seat with the chisel.
Jeez, he killed him in the car? Man. Well, I guess when Franks got in, Loeb struck him, who was sitting in the front of the passenger seat. He struck him several times in the head with a chisel, then dragged him into the back seat and gagged him where he died. With the body on the floorboard out of view. They did this in broad daylight?
Oh, my.
Out of view, the men... They're stupid already. The perfect crime is not so perfect.
I guess.
The men drove to their predetermined dumping spot near Wolf Lake in Hammond, Indiana, which is 25 miles south of Chicago. After nightfall, they removed and discarded Frank's clothes, then concealed the body in a culvert along the Pennsylvania Railroad tracks north of the lake. To obscure the body's identity, they poured hydrochloric acid on the face and genitals to disguise the fact that he had been circumcised. Yeah, man, looking for Jews.
Right. Jeez. Oh, Pete. Dang. What is going on? What did they put in the water in Chicago? And it's still even the same today.
I know.
My goodness. By the time the two men returned to Chicago, word had already spread that Franks was missing.
Of course. He's a fucking 14-year-old boy.
Leopold called Frank's mother, identifying himself as George Johnson. Told her that Frank had been kidnapped.
Oh, idiots. They should have just left it all alone.
Instructions for delivering the ransom were to follow. After mailing the typed ransom note and burning their blood-stained clothing, then cleaning the blood stains from the rented vehicle's upholstery, they spent the remainder of the evening playing cards, as only sick bastards would do. Man.
They didn't think of covering the floor with plastic or something, or a sheet. I mean, I know it's the 20s. They don't have, like, forensics and shit, but still.
Right. I mean, come on.
Once the Franks family received the ransom note on the following morning, Leopold called a second time and dictated the first set of instructions for the ransom payment. The intricate plan stalled almost immediately when a nervous family member forgot the address of the store where he was supposed to receive the next set of directions, and it was abandoned entirely when word came that Frank's body had been found.
Oh, no.
Leopold and Loeb destroyed the typewriter and burned a car robe.
Lap blanket.
Lap blanket. Apparently cars came with lap blankets back in the day. They had to use to move the body. Yeah, because not even, you remember, this is the 20s. Not a lot of cars even had roofs, dude.
All right. It was cold.
Yeah.
Cold.
That's stupid. Why? That's another thing. Why would you just make cars with no roofs?
Right.
And and they're made in the Midwest where it's raining and snowing all the time. Hey, guys, just drive around.
So they found the body that quick. The ransom got all screwed up. Perfect crime, my ass. Well, they then went about their lives as usual. Chicago police launched an intense investigation. Rewards were offered. While Loeb went about his daily routine quietly, Leopold spoke freely to police and reporters, offering theories to any who would listen. He even told one detective, if I were to murder anybody, it would be just such a cocky little son of a bitch as Bobby Franks.
Oh, jeez. Okay, so maybe Bobby Franks was like, fuck you guys,
right.
that kind of.
Police found a pair of eyeglasses near Frank's body. Although common in prescription and frame, they were fitted with an unusual hinge purchased by only 3 customers in Chicago.
Oh, my gosh.
And guess what one of those 3 customers were? Old Leopold.
Jeez, dude. These kids are the dumbest. These might even be the dumbest people we've covered so far. When questioned, Leopold offered the possibility that his glasses might have dropped out of his pocket during a bird-watching trip the previous weekend. Oh, you just happened to bird-watch right by a culvert, right by a railroad track.
Jeez.
Leopold and Loeb were summoned for formal questioning on May 29th. They asserted that on the night of the murder, they had picked up 2 women in Chicago using Leopold's car, dropped them off sometime later near a golf course without learning their last names.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Their alibi was exposed as a fabrication when Leopold's chauffeur told police that he was repairing Leopold's car while the men claimed to be using it. Oh, jeez. No. Chauffeur's wife confirmed that the car was parked in the Leopold garage on the night of the murder. The destroyed typewriter was recovered from the Jackson Park Lagoon on June 7th. They even threw it in the water? How the hell did they get it? This is like extensive police work in 1924, dude. They ain't even doing this shit nowadays.
You know, it's one thing I'm not seeing.
FBI?
Yeah, and it's working out.
Right.
Look at that shit. Loeb was the first to confess.
Yeah.
He asserted that Leopold had planned everything and had killed Franks in the back seat of the car while Loeb drove. Leopold's confession followed swiftly thereafter, but he insisted that he was the driver and Loeb the murderer.
Of course.
Their confessions otherwise corroborated most of the evidence in the case. Both confessions were announced by the state's attorney on 31st May. Leopold later claimed, long after Loeb was dead, that he pleaded in vain with Loeb to admit to killing Franks. He says, Mopsy feels less terrible than she might, thinking you did it. He quotes Loeb saying, and I'm not going to take that shred of comfort away from her.
So Leopold was the one all around town talking about if I had did it. Fucking precursor to O.J. Simpson and shit. Clearly he's the one that killed him.
Right.
Well, most observers believe that Loeb didn't. Oh, okay, never mind. Most observers did believe that Loeb did indeed strike the fatal blow. Some circumstantial evidence included testimony from eyewitness Carl Olvey, who said he saw Loeb driving and Leopold in the back minutes before the kidnapping, suggested that Leopold could have been the killer.
Oh.
Both Leopold and Loeb admitted they were driven by their thrill-seeking Superman delusions and their aspiration to commit a perfect crime.
Of course they were.
Neither claimed to have looked forward to the killing, but Leopold admitted interest in and learning what it would feel like to be a murderer. He was disappointed to note that he felt the same as ever. So if he... wait a minute. So if he felt the same as ever, he was the one that killed him, right?
Right.
Because you can't feel anything as a murderer if you just drove.
Jeez, oh, Pete. The trial of Leopold and Loeb at the Chicago's Cook County Criminal Court became a media spectacle. Oh, and the third trial after those of Harry Thaw and Sacco and Vanzetti, to be labeled the trial of the century.
And lots more to come.
Loeb's family hired the renowned criminal defense attorney Clarence Darrow to lead the defense team. It was rumored that Darrow was paid $1 million.
Holy shit.
But he was actually paid $70,000, equivalent to $1.1 million in 2021, though.
So he was.
Darrow took the case because he was a staunch opponent of capital punishment.
Capital punishment. This is what this case would actually be famous for.
Yeah.
While it was generally assumed that the men's defense would be based on a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, I would say it was pretty crazy. Darrow concluded that jury trial would almost certainly end in conviction and the death penalty.
Damn right it would.
Thus, he elected to enter a plea of guilty, hoping to convince Cook County Circuit Court Judge John R. Calverley to impose sentences of life.
Right, why go to trial?
Right.
Well, the trial, technically an extended sentencing, as their guilty pleas had already been accepted, it ran for 32 days. Why? I don't understand why. The state's attorney, Robert E. Crow, presented over 100 They pleaded guilty.
Right.
Over 100 witnesses documenting details of the crime. The defense presented extensive psychiatric testimony in an effort to establish mitigating. I guess they got to try to get the lowest sentence that you can.
Prosecutors probably would have challenged it anyway.
Right. The defense presented extensive psychiatric testimony in an effort to establish mitigating circumstances, including childhood neglect in the form of absent parenting. Absent parenting, huh? Well, because they're so rich and
mama and daddy ain't there. It's like they're seen from Richie Rich.
Right.
They're having dinner with him at a TV screen.
Well, in Leopold's case, sexual abuse by a governess. That sucks.
A governess, who would that be? Like mom or a maid or something? Somebody who was watching over him?
You would think so, right?
Right.
Darrow called a series of expert witnesses who offered a catalog of Leopold's and Loeb's abnormalities. One witness testified to their dysfunctional endocrine glands. Another to the delusions that had led to their crime. What's an endocrine gland?
Endocrine?
Endocrine gland?
Ductless glands of the endocrine system that secrete their products, hormones, directly into the blood.
Oh, okay.
Whoa.
You got a lot of glands. 2 in the brain, one in the neck.
The major glands of the endocrine system, the pineal, the pituitary,
and the adrenal gland.
The pancreas, the ovaries, the testes, the thyroid, the parathyroid, the hypothalamus, and the adrenal gland.
Yeah, your glands are important, bud.
Darrow's impassioned 12-hour-long masterful plea, 12-hour-long, well,
Dang.
At the conclusion of the hearing has been called the finest speech of his career.
No shit.
Its principal arguments were that the methods and punishments of the American justice system were inhumane and the youth and immaturity of the accused. He says, this terrible crime was inherent in his organism, and it came from some ancestor. Is any blame detached because somebody took Nietzsche's philosophy seriously and fashioned his life upon it? It is hardly fair to hang a 19-year-old boy for the philosophy that was taught him at the university.
Oh, no, jeez, don't blame.
Indoctrinating, right?
Jeez.
This is all his letter, or his speech.
And he also goes on to say, we read of the killing 100,000 men in a day during World War I. We read about it. We rejoiced in it. If it was the other fellows who were killed, we were fed on flesh and drank blood, even down to the prattling babe. I need not tell you how many upright, honorable young boys have come into this court charged with moida, some saved and some sent to their death. Boys who fought in this war and learned to place a cheap value on human life. You know it, and I know it. These boys were brought up in it.
He continues, it will take 50 years to wipe it out of the human heart, if ever. I know this, that after the Civil War in 1865, crimes of the sort increased marvelously. No one needs to tell me that crime has no cause. It has as definite a cause as any other disease, and I know that out of the hatred and bitterness of the Civil War, crime increased as America had never seen before. Right. I know that Europe is going through the same experience today. I know it has followed every war, and I know it has influenced these boys so that life was not the same to them as it would have been if the world had not been red with blood.
I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Your Honor knows that in this very court, crimes of violence have increased growing out of the war. Not necessarily by those who fought, but by those that learned that blood was cheap, human life was cheap, and if the state could take it lightly, why not the boy? Has the court any right to consider anything but these two boys? The state says that Your Honor has a right to consider the welfare of the community, as you have. If the welfare of the community would be benefited by taking these lives, well and good. I think it would work evil that no one could measure. Has Your Honor a right to consider the families of these defendants?
He says, I have been sorry, and I am sorry for the bereavement of Mr. and Mrs. Franks, for those broken ties that cannot be healed. All I can hope and wish is that some good may come from it all. But as compared with the families of Leopold and Loeb, the Franks are to be envied, and everyone knows it.
All right.
Why? Their kid got killed.
All right.
Here's Leopold's father, and this boy was the pride of his life. He watched him and he cared for him. He worked for him. The boy was brilliant and accomplished. He educated him, and he thought that fame and position awaited him, as it should have awaited. This dude, I'm sorry to say that these kids' families are struggling more than the one that was murdered. I mean, that's a little ignorant.
Jeez, oh, Pete. He continues. It is a hard thing for a father to see his life's hopes crumble into dust. And Loeb's the same. Here are the faithful uncle and brother who have watched here day by day, while Dickie's father and his mother are too ill to stand this terrific strain and shall be waiting for a message which means more to them than it can mean to you or me. Shall these be taken into account in this general bereavement? The easy thing and the popular thing to do is to hang my clients. I know it. Men and women do not think will applaud. The cruel and thoughtless will approve. Oh.
It will be easy today, but in Chicago and reaching out over the length and breadth of the land, more and more fathers and mothers, the humane, the kind, and the hopeful, who are gaining an understanding and asking questions not only about these poor boys, but about their own. These will join in no acclaim at the death of my clients. Uh-oh. These would ask the shedding of blood to be stopped, and that the normal feelings of man resume their sway. Your honor stands between the past and the future. You may hang these boys. You may hang them by the neck until they are dead. But in doing it, you will turn your face toward the past.
Jeez, oh, Pete. And he continues. In doing it, you are making it harder for every other boy who in ignorance and darkness must grope his way through the mazes which only childhood knows. In doing it, you will make it harder for unborn children. You may save them. You may make it easier for every child that sometime may stand where these boys stand. You will make it easier for every human being with an aspiration and a vision and a hope and a fate. I'm pleading for the future. I'm pleading for a time when hatred and cruelty will not control the hearts of men. When we can learn by reason and judgment and understanding and faith that all life is worth saving and that mercy is the highest attribute of man. Are you done, sir?
I know. Jeez, dude. That went on for 12 hours.
Shit.
Jeez, well, the judge was persuaded.
Hey, I mean, I would be too.
But he explained in his ruling that his decision was based primarily on precedent and the youth of the accused.
12 hours hard labor.
Right. On September 10th, 1924, he sentenced both Leopold and Loeb to life for the murder and additional 99 for the kidnapping. A little over a month later, Loeb's father died of heart failure.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so they're both dying in prison. Gives a shit.
Right. Leopold and Loeb initially were held at Juliet Prison. Although they were kept apart as much as possible, the two managed to maintain their friendship. Leopold was transferred to Stateville Penitentiary in 1931. Loeb was later transferred there as well. Once reunited, the two expanded the prison school system, adding a high school and junior college curriculum.
Oh, good for them, right? January 28th, unfortunately, 1936, Loeb was attacked by fellow inmate James Day with a straight razor in a shower room.
Oh, shit.
He died soon after in the prison hospital.
Damn.
Day claimed that Loeb had sexually assaulted him, but he was unharmed while Loeb sustained more than 50 wounds, including defensive wounds on his arms and hands. His throat had been slashed from behind. Jeez. News accounts suggested that Loeb had propositioned Day. The authorities, perhaps embarrassed by alleged same-sex behavior in the prison, ruled that Day was defending himself.
Oh, wow.
Jeez.
A sexual motive for the killings was suggested. While some sources state that newsman Ed Leigh began his story in the Chicago Daily News with the lead. Richard Loeb, despite his erudition, today ended his sentence with a proposition. Okay. Quote, end quote. No evidence has been found that this lead was ever published. An actual copy from that date reads otherwise.
So why bring it up?
Right.
It's clearly already... Jeez.
February 19, 1936, in a column printed at the Syracuse Journal, Mark Hellinger wrote, I must tell you of the line that came to me from an unknown correspondent in Chicago.
He said, this anonymous contributor said that he had the absolute lowdown on the recent slaying of Dickie Loeb. Seems that Loeb made a slight mistake in grammar. He ended a sentence in a proposition. Other newspapers at the time appeared to praise Day, who was later tried and acquitted of Loeb's murder. There is no evidence that Loeb was a sexual predator while in prison, but Day was later caught at least once in a sexual act with a fellow inmate.
Oh, jeez.
In his autobiography, Life Plus 99 Years, Leopold ridiculed Day's claim that Loeb had attempted to sexually assault him.
Right.
This was echoed by the prison's Catholic chaplain, a confidant of Loeb's, who said that it was more likely that Day attacked Loeb after Loeb rebuffed his advances.
Right, exactly.
Loeb was like, dude, I'm not gay. I'm not sucking your dick. Dude.
No, sorry.
Dude, this dude's in prison with a three-piece suit on.
Right.
What the hell?
Crazy stuff. Leopold continued with his work after Loeb's death. Despite suffering from depression, he became a model prisoner. Made significant contributions to improving conditions at Stateville Penitentiary. These included reorganizing the prison library, revamping the schooling system, teaching its students, and volunteer work in the prison hotel.
That motherfucker's put up a 5-star prison.
Right, nice. And volunteer work in the prison hospital. In the year of 1944, Leopold volunteered for the Statesville Penitentiary malaria study. He was deliberately inoculated with malaria pathogens and then subjected to several experimental malaria treatments.
Good for him.
Right, that seems like what's going on this past couple of years.
Well, malaria is actually serious, though.
Right. He later wrote that all his good work in prison and after his release was an effort to compensate for his crime.
Spoiler.
Early 1950s author Meyer Levin.
Meyer.
Yep, author Meyer Levin, a classmate at the University of Chicago, requested Leopold's cooperation in writing a novel based on Frank's murder. Leopold responded that he did not wish his story told in fictionalized form, but offered Levin a chance to contribute to his own memoir, which was in progress. Levin, unhappy with the suggestion, went ahead with his book alone, despite Leopold's expressed objections.
I mean, it doesn't have to have him involved anyways. Right. That novel, titled Compulsion, was published in 1956. Levin portrayed Leopold under the pseudonym Judd Steiner as a brilliant but deeply disturbed teenager, psychologically driven to kill because of his troubled childhood and an obsession with Loeb. Jeez.
Wow, that wasn't even close.
Yeah, that took a turn. Leopold later wrote that reading Levin's book made him physically sick. More than once I had to lay the book down and wait for the nausea to subside.
You ain't kidding.
I felt as I suppose a man would feel if you were exposed stark naked under a strong spotlight before a large audience.
Right.
Yeah, dude. Trying to say that this dude was like in love with Loeb?
Right.
Jeez.
What the hell? Jeez, oh, Pete, Leopold's autobiography, Life Plus 99 Years. Published in 1958 as part of his campaign to win parole. He should have got life with no parole. Get the hell out of here. In beginning his account with the immediate aftermath of the crime, he engendered widespread criticism for his deliberate refusal, expressly stated in the book, to recount his childhood or describe any details of the murder.
So what? Just because he doesn't want to talk about it?
Right. He also was accused of writing the book solely as a means of rehabilitating his public image by ignoring the dark side of his past.
You gotta do what you gotta do, man.
Right.
After 33 years and numerous unsuccessful petitions, Leopold was paroled in March of 1958.
Wow.
So he served 24 years about. The Brethren Service Commission, which was a Church of the Brethren affiliated program, accepted him as a medical technician at its hospital in Puerto Rico. He expressed his appreciation in an article. He said, "To me, the Brethren Service Commission offered the job, the home, and the sponsorship without which a man cannot be paroled.
Right.
But it gave me so much more than that. The companionship, the acceptance, the love which would have rendered a violation of parole almost impossible."
Right. Surprised he didn't go into animal stuff, huh?
Right.
He was known as Nate to neighbors and co-workers at Castaneer General Hospital in Adjuntas, where he worked as a laboratory and x-ray assistant.
Dude, just getting out and did a damn good job and stuff.
Damn right. Later in 1958, Leopold attempted to set up the Leopold Foundation, to be founded by royalties from Life Plus 99 Years, to aid emotionally disturbed, retarded, or delinquent youths. That's what he said.
You can't say that, Leopold.
The state of Illinois avoided his charter, however, on grounds that it violated the terms of his parole.
Why?
He's not allowed to.
Not allowed to make money? He can't
make money off his murder.
Maybe he's not allowed around youths.
Right.
1959, Leopold sought to block production of the film version of Compulsion on the grounds that Levin's book had invaded his privacy, defamed him, profited from his life story, and intermingled fact and fiction to such an extent that they were indistinguishable.
All right.
Hey, welcome to Hollywood, honey.
Right.
Eventually, the Illinois Supreme Court ruled against him, of course, holding that Leopold, as the confessed perpetrator of the crime of the century, could not reasonably argue that any book had injured his reputation.
Right.
Dude, you're accused. You went to prison for murder.
If I was the judge, I'd be like, really? Really, Leopold?
Subsequently, Leopold moved to Sanchurce and married a widowed florist.
Does that widowed florist know who he was?
Well, it doesn't matter.
Well, he earned a master's degree at the University of Puerto Rico.
Damn.
He then taught classes there.
Oh.
Became a researcher in the social service program, Puerto Rico's Department of Health. Worked for an urban renewal and housing agency. Did research on leprosy at the University of Puerto Rico School of Medicine. Leopold was also active in the Natural History Society of Puerto Rico, traveling throughout the island to observe its bird life.
Hey, look at him.
1963, he published Checklist of Birds, Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Look at this guy. He gets a
Filling his life dreams.
Gets a murder a cocky 14-year-old and
spends few decades in prison, then gets out and There's always, this kind of goes back to the Wild West stuff, because remember, there's like 3 phases of their lives.
Right.
Their early years, their prison years, and
Right.
their after prison years.
Right.
So this dude's got a Wild West theme going on here.
Right.
While he spoke of his intention to write a book titled Reach for a Halo about his life following prison, he never did. Leopold died of a diabetes-related heart attack August 29, 1971, at the age of 66.
Wow.
The Franks murder has inspired works of film, theater, and fiction, including the 1929 play Rope by Patrick Hamilton, performed on BBC television in 1939, and Alfred Hitchcock's film of the same name in 1948.
Okay.
The fictionalized version of the events formed the basis of obviously the novel Compulsion and the film.
I'm going to have to watch that. Hitchcock one.
Maybe you did.
1957, 2 more fictionalized novels were released. They were Nothing But the Nights by James Yaffe and Little Brother Fate by Mary Carter Roberts.
Cool.
Never the Sinner, John Logan's 1985 play, was based on contemporary newspaper accounts of the case and included an explicit portrayal of Leopold and Loeb's sexual relationship.
Oh, jeez.
Did they have a sexual relationship? I guess so.
The only ones that are saying it are the media.
Wow. 2019, the story was fictionally retold again in the 3rd season of The Sinner. Never seen it.
No.
In his book, Murder Most Queer, in 2014, theater scholar Jordan Schildenkraut examines changing attitudes towards homosexuality in various theatrical and cinematic representations of the Leopold and Loeb case.
What is it with these guys calling them homos? They weren't even. There's nothing in that. It said they were banging each other.
Right.
They just wanted to be Supermen. They occasionally ran around with capes with nothing else on.
Right.
Jeez.
Who cares?
Other works influenced by the case include Richard Wright's 1940 novel Native Son, the Matlock episode The Sisters, the Columbo episode Columbo Goes to College. Okay. Tom Kalin's 1992 film Swoon, Michael Haneke's 1997 Australian film Funny Games, and the 2008 international remake Barbette Schroeder's Murder by Numbers, in 2002 Daniel Clowes' 2005 graphic novel Ice Haven, Stephen Dulganoff's 2005 off-Broadway musical Thrill Me, the Leopold and Loeb story, and the film Scream. Yeah, I guess Scream was taken with Leopold and Loeb. Billy and the other guy are like best friends trying to do the
Perfect murder.
Trying to frame people and all that stuff.
Right. Your mom was no Sharon Stone.
Right. Well, I'd say Loeb got the short end of the stick in this story, huh? Jeez.
Yeah.
Leopold went out and just lived a life, dude.
He's OP, and he's the one that orchestrated it all.
Right. He's the one that's fantasized about being Superman. Child prodigy. Wow. And he was the one that was originally fascinated by Nietzsche or whatever the hell his name was.
Nietzsche.
I mean, come on, dude. Little Bobby Franks, dude. Little Bobby Franks.
Knickers.
Moida in his little knickers.
That's sad news, boys.
That is sad news.
That's some fucked up shit.
Yeah. Crime of the Century, another one. One of the first ones. Third one.
At least.
Right. Yeah, that's going to do it for us. And the Leopold and Loeb. I feel like I've heard that in other settings before. Leopold and Loeb.
Maybe.
Had to be famous for something else.
No, nothing else, bud.
I don't know. I guess famous for the speech, getting him off of death penalty.
Right.
And the perfect crime concept, I guess, was created with these guys, right? And I think after this, the whole concept of writing novels and plays and movies about perfect crimes probably came from these guys, I would assume. So you see all the shit that was made about it or inspired by it. So, yeah, that'll do it for us, Outlaws and Gunslingers. We'll be back next week for Michael Jackson. Maybe. Something. We'll be back for something. We know that. In the meantime, go check out Battles of the American Civil War, where we are in the middle of May of 1862, working up into Second Bull Run, plus a couple other big battles. We just finished the Battle of Corinth. Big one right there. Sieging that city. So, rebel cities are falling by the day over there in 1862. Battles of the American Civil War. Also, this week in sports history, where we go through the week's most famous and not so famous, plus some obscure stats you probably might not have heard or didn't remember that you did. This could help you if you're ever playing Trivial Pursuit or some trivial games. So check it out. Battles of the American Civil War. Just look up Bang Dang Network on Google or any other internet, I guess, and you'll find those 2 shows and a couple other shows that we do over there. So, Bang Dang Network, Battles of the American Civil War, and This Week in Sports History. We'll be back next week for another enthralling episode. I think that's a word, enthralling.
Sure.
Episode of Outlaws and Gunslingers. We are the Mouth of Michiganders with
Bang Dang.